Blessings, blessings. Hello, hello, hello. Thank you guys so much for joining me on oh Lord, Well Springs of Life on Power Fueled Living. I'm your host, Lisa Hooks, and I'm excited about this message because it is about marriage. So many of you know, and some of you don't. I have a ministry partner. Her name is Maggie Kavanaugh. And we have a ministry called Liberty Through Christ Be Made Whole. And God gave us that vision. He gave us that ministry, I want to say about 8 years ago. And what it is we do quarterly intensives on things that are important to our Christian livelihood. And then we have an annual conference. So we have been doing that, like I said, for several years, and then COVID hit. And God had already put it in my heart and in Maggie's heart that we needed to flip the script to marriage. We needed to start doing intensives on marriage and having a conference on marriage. And so we did. After COVID, we had our first conference. It was a blessing. And I am going to show you parts of that conference and last year's conference throughout the week. I'm going to do 15-minute episodes of the conference because because we are having our second quarterly intensive on boundaries. And I have to say that boundaries are so very important. Listen, guys, any type of relationship needs boundaries. It does not matter if you're married, friendships, blood relationships. You need to have boundaries set so that you will not be taken advantage of, so that you will not feel used or misused. You know, boundaries are healthy tools and they are essential for strong relationships and personal well-being. You know, and our intensive will help you identify where your limits are. It will help you identify how to communicate those limits or those boundaries effectively and enforce your boundaries without guilt. Enforce your boundaries without guilt. You know, you gain tools to protect your energy, to break from toxic dynamics. And you can cultivate self respect by having boundaries. You know, you can walk away with confidence and say no when you need to say no, and yes when you need to say yes. Okay. And so Maggie and I, we wrote a book called Your Marriage Tools, a marriage devotion. We wrote this last April. And in it, one of the marriage tools is boundaries. And I am going to um, teach this tonight. But again, I want to encourage you. I am going to have parts of our marriage conference online. And I want you to see and I want you to hear the value of what we're talking about. Because if you are in a situation where you are not happy in your marriage, you're not happy in your relationship, or you want to improve your relationship, you want to grow your relationship, I want to encourage you to sign up for our intensive on boundaries. And that sign up will be on Eventbrite next Sunday. We will have that out next Sunday. But let's talk about boundaries. I'm just going to read, you know, there was so much that we wanted to tap into with these marriage tools, and boundaries was very important. The scripture is First Peter 4 and 8, and it says, above all, keep loving one another earnestly, since love covers a multitude of sins. Oh my gosh, did you hear that? Above all, keep loving one another earnestly, since love covers a multitude of sins. Boundaries are important to our daily lives. A lot of us have boundaries put in place, but we have not told our spouse or our partner that there are boundaries. It's only when they try to pass those boundaries or they go beyond those boundaries that we speak up. But I want to encourage you, if you have boundaries that you feel like your spouse or partner has invaded, talk to them about it. Share your boundaries. Ask God how to put your boundaries in order and how to talk to your spouse, because boundaries are so very important to our daily lives. They are also essential in maintaining a harmonious relationship, a harmonious partnership. When you dated, did you have relationship rules? Most of us don't have relationship rules. Consider those rules as boundaries. You know, and I want to say, I think women more than men have relationship rules, but unfortunately, we don't think about those rules and how our dating partner has broken those rules or encouraged those rules or, did well with the rules. And so, boundaries are important for marriage growth. Respecting your spouse's individuality, respecting your spouse's individuality and personal space is a good example of this, right? Don't make him or her feel guilty if time alone is needed. If your spouse wants time alone just to decompress or to think about something important to them, don't make them feel guilty about that. Don't make them feel guilty. Don't make your wife feel guilty because she wants to go to a spa. Don't make your husband feel guilty because he wants to go golfing. He wants to hang out with his friends. Don't make him feel guilty for that. Talk about it. Schedule those things into your marital life, your marital lifestyle. Guilt is not of God, okay? So you want to make sure that you are talking, communicating properly with your spouse or partner. You know, and I'm saying spouse or partner because I know that there are several of you Christians who have partners. You have someone, you may not be engaged yet, and so that person, that man or woman, is a partner. Okay, just be clear about that. And so you want to consider emotional health. It's easy to get stressed over many things, especially with how the world is constructing now, how the culture is constructing, transitioning. It's a lot to be overwhelmed about. And so we can get stressed about the things that are happening in our world right now. And so setting aside some time to meditate, to read a book, to take a nap can alleviate that stress. But also thinking about the blessing that your spouse is. I remember going to a conference, and there was a woman, she was talking about divorce. And she had us to write out the good things that our spouse did and the bad things that our spouse did. And so I was in my early 20s. I had not been married very long. I want to say maybe 5 years. And I was just thinking, oh man, yeah, I can think about all the negative stuff. Yeah, let me write those things down. And so I want to say I may have written down three or four things. And then the good things I started writing, and I kept writing, and I kept writing, and I kept writing. Guys, sometimes we can focus on negative things when those negative things do not, they do not outweigh the positive. So when you think about that, when you think about the good things that your spouse is doing, the good things, the way your spouse acts, the way your spouse talks, the way whatever your spouse do that is good, that's what you want to concentrate on more than the negative. And I remember I remember being angry with my husband. Oh my gosh. And I was like, Lord, you need to do something about him. You need to straighten him out. And I got silent for a minute to see what God was going to say. And he said, go fix him something to eat. Man, I was not expecting that. But God was teaching me, God is going to start with you, regardless of what's going on in your life. He's going to teach you first. And so I'm slamming dishes and and then I was like, and then I kept saying, okay, I kept hearing in my mind, peace, peace. And so I began to think about the peace. And so after I finished dinner, I was actually at peace. And so, sometimes we can get stressed and we can get angry at our spouse, but God's going to deal with you about it. And so it's very important though to have boundaries with conflicts, okay? Arguing, snapping, belittling, that is not healthy. That is not healthy. There is a safe way to communicate when you're angry. There is a good way, a better way to communicate when you're angry. And so we have to keep in mind that we love this person. You love your spouse, or you did. And if you think about your spouse and you think about what you want to do with your spouse, the life you want to have with your spouse, think about those good things. Think about how much you love it. And you know what? If you don't feel love, ask God, Lord, please help me. Please show me how to love my spouse. Please show me how to love my spouse better. Please show me compassion. Help me to be compassionate towards my spouse. You have to take your issues, your problems, your junk to God and give it to Him and ask Him for help. He will definitely help you. A well-defined boundary for communication can alleviate unnecessary hostilities, angst, and conflict. Agreeing to discuss issues in a calm manner, even when upset, can be crucial for a healthy marriage. If you are too upset to continue your discussion, walk away. Say, I have to stop now because I'm too angry and I need to walk away. Tell your spouse what's going on and walk away and say, we'll deal with this later. We'll deal with this at another time, and walk away. Even if your spouse is still fussing, walk away. Walk away. And so if you are too upset, walk away. You have to have a boundary. And that boundary can be, when I'm too angry to have this discussion, I will leave the discussion. Okay? You gotta leave the discussion because you don't want anything to happen. You don't want any hands. You don't want any hands moving. You don't want any violent tempers happening. You want to walk away. You want to set that boundary and walk away. Setting boundaries come through communication. And so you want to share with your spouse what you like and what you don't like. If you want to go golfing with friends, like I said, every other week, date night every Friday, or a spa once a month, have the discussion. Have the discussion. You may point out things that you would like your spouse to improve on, but don't overstep. If there is something bothering you and you thinking about it and you say, you know what, I need my husband to do this, this, and this, just pick one. Just pick one. Have one discussion on one issue because you can overstep by adding too many issues, by adding too many problems to the conversation. You don't want to do that. And we will talk about that in our boundary intensive. I suggest you pray before having any conversation. You want to pray before having any conversation that can be misunderstood or taken the wrong way. Please, please, please pray. Setting healthy boundaries are important, but respecting those boundaries are equally important. You must respect the boundaries. Even if you set your boundaries, you must respect them. And you must, if your spouse has boundaries set, please respect those boundaries. Now, if those boundaries are out of order or the boundaries don't make sense to the marriage covenant, you need to continue to talk about that and pray about that. Pray about that. Because a lot of times, the enemy is deceptive and the enemy is always coming at us and talking in our ear. And if your spouse or even you feel like something may be a little off, but you want to do it anyway, or he wants to do it anyway, or she wants to do it anyway, have that discussion and ask God for the spirit of discernment. We definitely need the spirit of discernment now. I'm telling you, in this day and age, we must have the spirit of discernment. Okay, so again, we have our boundary intensive on June 7th, and that information will go out next Sunday because I am going to show you videos, pieces of our marriage conference throughout the week to kind of encourage you and show you the value of growing your marriage, the value of helping your marriage, the value of praying for your marriage. Okay. All right. Heavenly Father, help us to set healthy boundaries, boundaries that will be a blessing to our marriage. Help us to honor those boundaries as well as we grow in our marriage. Show us grace and mercy when we make mistakes. All right, guys, God bless you. I will see you next week. Next week, and you have a blessed week. Take care. Bye bye.